Welcome everybody to the Power Lunch. We have an eagerly anticipated show or session today. I don't know if I call it a show, we'll call it a session. That makes me feel less formal, I guess. So we'll have a session. We have Synology and Eric Lando. This is one of our most popular and frequently asked for presenters in technology. So um, you know, thank you, Eric, for
Yeah,
joining us today. And
happy to be
um,
here.
for those of us who aren't knowledgeable about who you are, why don't you give us a little synopsis on who you are, what Synology is, who Synology is, and then we can go into kind of an overview because there's some cool stuff to talk about today.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So my name is Eric Lando. I'm a senior technical account manager here. I'm not sure what that means. Maybe I'm older, but I am a senior technical account manager here. I've been here for about 3 years, and Nephi Pro I think I've been doing this for almost that amount of time
Yep,
as
I think
well.
so.
Very excited to be here again. Synology, we're network attached storage. We do hardware and software. We have software as a service, but it's on our hardware, and it's kind of like a Swiss Army knife. What do you need done? We probably have some way that we can support you, and many other ways that we could look into benefiting you as well. Yeah, I'm excited to talk today. I'm kind of focused on protecting SaaS data. I'm trying to talk about things that are really important, and people have been using Microsoft 365, Google Workspace growingly over these past few years. And we're going to talk a little bit about that and why you should be concerned about making sure that you have backups of that data
Yeah,
that's
no,
on
that's
that
cool.
service.
I think just to kind of lead us into it a little bit, one of the things way back when we first started talking to you, Eric, was that
Mhm.
people were amazed with the level of function, the utility that Synology had put into their products. I mean, I've been a long time Synology user. You know, I used it for video way back when video archive.
Yeah,
I never at that time contemplated using it for production data. But I think that as the product has matured and you guys have added features and functions, two things. Number one, um, it's become a viable, production data type of a solution. And number two, some of the features that you put native in the product. I mean, again, the things that Eric's talking about mostly today are native in the product. They're not, right, Eric? I mean, they're not things you
yeah,
got to go out and necessarily license or that they are part of it. And I think that after you did the first presentation or the first kind of overview, everybody was like, wow, I had no idea.
yeah.
And still, as I'm talking to people and talk about the utter scalability and flexibility of the product, people are astounded. So, like I said, I
Yeah.
just wanted to kind of get that out and just say, this is part of what we're talking about. But the Synology line has some real cool features that come native right in the product. So,
Yeah, it's almost like it's kind of like the benefit of smartphones these days is they come with the applications that they know that you're going to utilize already
mhm,
on there and accessible, and they're not going to charge you more for those. So that's kind of the same reason people look at us to support them and their data and their business. So any solutions that we offer, we're going to give to them because they bought our hardware.
right.
So
And I'll say, I mean, professionally, obviously, we are a partner, but personally, I went out, I bought myself a Synology. I'm looking at it right now on my desk, and I use it in my everyday life. I use it to back up stuff. I use it for, I use the security station because I have two security cameras on it for my house, and that comes native with the product. So there's some crazy stuff you can do when you really start digging into it. But I won't take any more of your time. Let's get into what you're here to talk about.
yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. I'm going to share my screen, make sure that my screen pops up properly. Let's see. There we go. Can
yep,
everybody see it?
yep,
All right. So Today I kind of already introduced myself, introduced the product a little bit, but today what I wanted to talk to you guys about is the importance of backing up your SaaS data, what factors to consider when choosing a solution, and what some of the best practices may look like depending on the various, scenarios that we encounter out there. So, starting off here, I wanted to start it off with a quote. Now, this is a quote from a technology director that's worked in the public school system for a very long time and is a client of ours. So, to give you some context on this client, he has about 3,000 students and 400 employees that he's responsible for. The budget was limited, which, a lot of people have realized is an unfortunate truth for many organizations in these unprecedented times. So not only were they needing to back up that employee and student generated content, but also enormous amounts of student and employee records that by law they are required to keep for many years, even after the students or employees have left. So he begins by pointing out that there are various risks that their data is always facing. So in the Southeast, they're no strangers to bad weather. Tornadoes and hurricanes seem to be aimed their way pretty much all year long. And those hard to predict natural disasters could destroy their physical servers and the school itself. I like how he said the physical servers first, because he was talking more about, the building could be destroyed, but what's in that building, all the physical data that they have. So um, that's a risk, but they also wanted to talk about the rise of cyber attacks. And I know you guys have seen it in the news, and they had seen it too, that cyber attacks are not only targeting schools like theirs, but several other organizations out there. And you don't really know if you're at risk. So you have to just assume that, yes, I am at risk for that. And then also the simple fact that the majority of the risk is going to come from the thousands of students that want to change their grades and hack into the system, disgruntled employees that already have access to the system. Those are the ones that you have to worry about as well because of how easy it is for them to get in and cause some issues. So really his point here is that you can't predict disasters, when they're going to happen, how bad they're going to be. So it's better to be as best prepared for them beforehand. So now the year is 2023, and I'm going to go ahead and assume that everybody is using a different workflow than saving all of your data on a single thumb drive and then locking that in your desk. No one's really doing that anymore. The data is scattered across several different platforms, your workstations, Windows PCs, servers, virtual machines, and then obviously the cloud services out there like Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace. Now, obviously, it's fantastic to have a solution that can handle all of this, which we do. Active Backup Suite has a separate application for each one of these type of endpoints that you want to back up. But today we're focusing more on the cloud services side of that. So to put any importance on actually backing up this data, we need to know what this data is. So Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace are examples of software as a service. Now, obviously, pre-pandemic, these services did exist, but they existed in different forms and capabilities than they have now. And due to the quickness of the pandemic and the shortages of materials, organizations didn't have many options, and they saw software as a service as either the only option or the best option at the time, with little knowledge of how quickly they were going to adopt and grow their utilization of these services. So now more than ever, organizations have their critical data in the cloud. And this includes, but is not limited to, email and chat messages, team files and folders, vital contacts, important calendars, dates, and even student records and data. And all of this data used to be found in, boxes, hundreds of boxes in the warehouse of car dealerships or in back rooms on thousands of small thumb drives. But now all of this data tends to exist on the cloud or someone else's servers and infrastructure. So let's take a look at a case study that we put together. Now we find that this is a pretty common situation in education. So this is a solution that was easily replicated based on the scale of the school. So medium-sized school reached out to us. They had 1,300 email and drive accounts between students and faculty, and Due to the growing adoption of these cloud services, more and more data is being kept on these services, including the student files, records, and even educational content for easy collaboration between the educators, like the teachers and the departments, to make sure that they are all on the same page. These schools all need a solution for backing up this data because they are legally required to have access to it for a certain amount of time. So a simple no bells or whistle approach is to place a local device that will keep a copy of this data stored in your care. That way, if the cloud is down, interruptions and services do happen, or if you're having issues with your internet service provider and you can't access, you have a copy of that data to fall back on at all times locally. So in your head, I know what you guys are thinking right now. These services exist. I pay good money for these services. The only reason I utilize them is so I can store my data, and they give me tools to be more organized and efficient in my day-to-day. Why aren't they backing up this data? This is protected by them, correct? Now, for me, that's something that I thought and something that a lot of people who utilize these services think, but it almost never gets brought up, the responsibility, the shared responsibility that Microsoft has with its customers. Now, as you can see here, all the blue dots are responsibility of the customer, and all of the gray is for the responsibility of Microsoft. Now, on that important stuff, important information, data, your mobile devices and PCs, accounts, identities, all the information that you would want protected is all 100% the responsibility of the customer to retain that data and that information. So don't take it just from me. I mean, to clarify this even further, like, what does that actually mean? So that means that you pay for this service. You pay good money for the Microsoft 365 service or Google Workspace is very useful, but their responsibility is for the infrastructure of that service. That means that they need to make sure that the service is able to function and that you don't get any interruptions, and that is their responsibility. But they don't choose the data that you store on that infrastructures, you do. So it is to them still your responsibility to ensure that that data is protected no matter what. But definitely don't take my word for it. So you guys know that document that we all definitely read whenever we sign up for a service. I think it's called terms and conditions or something like that. We definitely don't scroll as fast as possible to the bottom to appease the computer to let us continue. Well, in that great read are some nuggets of information that clue you in on your responsibility of your data. So we recommend that you regularly back up your content and data and that you store on our services. You should have a regular backup plan, as Microsoft won't be able to retrieve your content or data once your account is closed. So essentially here, this is Microsoft standing up so the people in the back can hear them when they say, go out and find a third-party backup solution to protect your data. So there are several reasons that you would want to back up your data from the cloud. Like we spoke about before, risks include internal and external threats from people who are trying to hurt your organization. You also have those oopsie moments. Humans are flawed, so making mistakes is not only expected, but happens on a day-to-day basis. What's most important is how do we recover from those mistakes? And then another reason that you would want to back up the cloud data is simply to keep things for a long amount of time. Now, obviously, you can keep things for a long amount of time on these subscription services, but it's going to cost you year after year, month after month to keep this data on there that you don't necessarily need to have on the service. So let's talk a little bit more about malicious deletion. So I'm going to show an example. This is an excerpt from the news. Resentful employee deletes 1,200 Microsoft 365 accounts and gets prison. So I mean, good that he got what was coming at him. He obviously caused a lot of damage, but this is something that is not uncommon. This is a news excerpt that I've seen before in different ways, different scales. So you can't really say that this can never happen to you or your organization. So the background on this story, though, to learn a little bit more about it, is that the employee was working for a consultant firm and they were hired to help migrate another company to Microsoft 365. So obviously during this process, the employee and the company had a falling out and the company complained. And due to this complaint, that employee was fired. Now, obviously that employee was disgruntled. A lot of employees are disgruntled, but we don't know the breaking point of people. So this person was disgruntled enough to go ahead and delete those 1,200 Microsoft 365 accounts. And for them, they didn't have any backups for this. So what did they face next? So the results of this malicious behavior are the employees were not able to send or receive emails. There was no access to contact lists. There was no access to documents or directories. Customers couldn't reach them. Vendors couldn't reach them. They couldn't reach out to customers. They couldn't reach out to vendors and suppliers. So what happened? Their organization slowed down to almost a complete stop. And this wasn't just something that they fixed in a couple of days and they were back to normal. This is something that they repeatedly had to deal with for months at a time. So how much damage that did, I have no idea. It's different for everyone, depending on the organization. But I can tell you that most organizations can't have those type of problems and still feel comfortable. So what would happen if the situation was a little bit different? So what if they had backups? So in that sense, they would neutralize the attack, which is something they probably already did in the first step anyway. But neutralize the attack, they have things in place to notify the IT admin that something happened. And then there can be some automated or manual protocols that you can implement to make sure that that person can no longer cause any more damage. Now, once you have determined that that person can no longer cause any more damage, we have to assess the damage that occurred and start prioritizing what our recovery should look like. What do we need to get back up and running first, so on and so forth. Then, after they have figured out the priority, they're going to restore either file by file or by bulk recovery of entire mailboxes. This will allow for them to get back up and running a lot quicker than 3 months, because I'm guessing that whoever is involved in their IT was working on this 24/7. So if they had these backups in place, they probably could have solved it a lot quicker. So that's an example of a malicious attack, and we definitely have to worry about those. But some of the more common things will be just like accidental deletion of emails, accidental deletions of content, human errors that can really, ruin your day. So in order to kind of understand that, we need to know what happens when you delete an email. So I'm going to use Exchange for an email for an example. If the item is modified or permanently deleted by the user, the item is then moved to a recoverable items folder. Now, there is a timer job that runs periodically and identifies items whose retention period has then expired, and then those are permanently deleted within 14 days of the end of the retention period. Now, if the item is not modified or deleted, that same process runs periodically on all folders in the mailbox and identifies the emails and the items that have reached the end of their retention period, and then we'll move them into the recoverable items folder. And from there, you have your 14 days before it gets deleted permanently. Now, that 14 days, that is the default set by Microsoft. You can go into your settings and actually change that up to 30 days if you need. So what does that mean in a simpler way? So basically what that means that essentially any item that is deleted will be moved into a recoverable items folder once that it has its own retention policy, which is 14 days by default or 30 days if you change it. Wow, we skipped a lot ahead there. I have no idea what happened right there. I just said thank you and we were done. We're going to go back. You guys are getting a little bit of a preview. Okay. So you have your 14-day retention period. And then once you're in that recovery period, once that folder or email has landed in that recoverable items folder, you then have an additional 14-day retention period to back up that data before it gets permanently deleted. So what we need to do here is make sure that if this is news to you at all, that you should go into your settings immediately and at least make sure that the default setting is maximized to 30 so that you give yourself some more breathing room there. And if there's anything else that you need to do, there is the ability to actually use a legal route to put in a litigation hold or an in-place hold for those items. So there are ways that you can adjust the settings within Microsoft without having to do anything further. So let's make sure that we avoid accidents as much possible by following these best practices. Now, I'm assuming this is common sense and everybody follows this, but if you're going to be changing settings that could affect your data or your system or anything, make sure you run a backup task beforehand to make sure that you can recover to go back to the moment before you did whatever changes that you made. You always want to make sure that you have that capability. We also want to make sure that you're prioritizing your maintenance. So only schedule maintenance during low usage hours. Maybe don't have someone do an update to the operating system of your server in the middle of production day. Try to schedule that out for the end of the day or at a time where you can limit the impact of not only the update, but the impact of any potential accidents that may happen when you're doing that update or changing those settings. And if something still happens, you've been super precautious, but something still happened, you don't sweat it. You simply are going to recover from the latest backup that you have. And that's the peace of mind that you can have doing these backups. So we talked about malicious deletion. We talked about, oops, I deleted an email. What happens? How much time do I have to recover that email? Now let's talk about something that is not a negative thing. It's simply sometimes we need to keep data for a long amount of time. So here's a case in point, and we're going to stay on the school because schools education does require that you keep data for a long time. So this case study is going to involve a vocational college. They have about 19,000 users, and between all those users, around 100,000 different accounts that they needed backup and accessible for at least 5 years or longer was their legal requirement for that, obligation for that. And as you can imagine, they were following their requirement, but subscriptions were just stacking up because they, the amount of students that they become former students every year was growing. That means that they need to keep these subscription services going to keep the data on Microsoft 365. So these fees have just kept on building up and building up as their student count grew. So to give you an idea on data retention and deletion within Microsoft 365. So if a paid subscription ends, so let's say you're realizing that you don't want to keep paying for these former employees or former students, but you do have to keep the data. Remember that you can't get in there and just terminate or cancel the plan, because then you start the timer for 90 days of getting that data out and somewhere else. And this is even if you didn't, and let's say you forgot to pay and you never received any notifications about this and it goes and discontinues itself. You're going to lose that data within 90 days. So to protect yourself against that, it's the same thing if you go in and delete the account. To protect yourself against that, you want to at least make sure that you have all the data for that account backed up, because they can re-enable an account at any time, but they can't re-enable the data that they deleted. So retaining former user data is important to a lot of people and also required by a lot of people. So this school faced a dilemma, one that would be difficult for nearly anyone to solve. Do I pay year after year per user for a subscription service to keep the data for students that are no longer here? Or do I, because I know that those former students are not growing their data, they're former students, that data is going to stay the same. So I know exactly how much it is. I would rather calculate how much storage space I need, figure out exactly how much storage space that I will need to grow into over the next 3 to 5 years, and purchase it one time and know exactly how much that solution is going to cost me. The other option is to just hope that Microsoft 365 doesn't change the cost of the subscription, to hope that the subscription maybe goes down in cost. this is the only true way to make sure that you're like, okay, I need to get rid of some of these subscriptions, but I need to keep the data. This is the best path for you. So what did the vocational college end up doing? Did they choose to keep on paying those subscriptions? No, they went out, they talked to us at Synology, they scaled something out to fit their needs appropriately, and now they have a local copy of all their Microsoft 365 data that they have access to whenever they need to. Doesn't matter if their ISP is down, doesn't matter if 365 is down, they have access to all that data because it's stored locally on a third-party solution that's separate from Microsoft 365 completely. So the benefits to archiving this data is obviously going to be, if you need to, and then you have now satisfied that obligation. But some of the other reasons that you would want to do that is to save money. So in order to save money of those former accounts, you would need to go make sure that you back up that data. And then once you have that data for that account backed up, you can then deactivate the account and that subscription will fall off. If for some reason you needed to get that account back up and running and get all the data back on there, then you simply reactivate the account with Microsoft 365, make sure your subscription is getting paid, and then you can restore all of that data back to that account as you need it. So let's compare the options for third-party backup, because there's kind of two different ways that you can do this. Now, you can do a cloud-to-cloud backup. This is always an option. What's easier than hopping on a computer and signing up for another subscription service? I mean, I don't think that I can log onto my computer at this point without signing up for something new, it seems. So while this is easy and scaling up is extremely easy because it's based on someone else's limitations, not your own, the very reason you're looking for a solution is to avoid high costs. And this is certainly going to increase that cost. So the other option is cloud to local. And this method gives you pros and cons, but I think the cons for this are a lot easier to accept when factoring in the cost benefit. So complete and total control of your data, no access, the data, the government doesn't have access to it, you have complete control. I know for 99% of you, that's all you needed to know. That's a big one. We're good. I have complete control of my data and that's what I want. But also you get less reoccurring fees, no reoccurring fees in our choice because we don't have that, it's built into the hardware. And the other part is the internet goes down, you don't have to rely on your ISP, to be, providing the service that they told you they're going to provide to you. ISPs are one of the only places, I guess weathermen are kind of the same way, that can be completely wrong or complete or give you issues, but they'll still charge you the same amount for that month's service. So you don't have to worry about any of that, but the trade-off is a more hands-on approach to setup and maintenance. Now, obviously NetV Pro is probably going to be handling this for you, so it's more on them. For them, it's an easy system to use. That's one of the system benefits of our system, is that we try to make it as user-friendly as possible. And we also want to make sure that it's reliable as possible. So the more maintenance and setup here is pretty easy because it's mitigated by the fact that it's a simple system to use and has proven reliability. Now, some other considerations before you go down this path is you got to factor in your RTO. How long can you wait for the data to be accessible before your organization feels negative impacts? You need to ensure that the solution that you choose can provide that needed recovery time. Also, you need to make sure that scale is considered. Scale is extremely important. Plan for your best. Your organization is going to grow. That means that your data needs are going to grow. So ensure that the solution is going to be able to grow with your data needs. And then lastly, we mentioned a more hands-on approach to managing the solution. You more than likely have tools in place already for managing other aspects of your organization. So shouldn't this solution integrate with your existing tools as well as it can? These are all things to keep in mind when you're trying to find the right solution for your organization. So I've been talking a lot about a solution, and I figure you guys should know the name of the solution. It's called Active Backup for Microsoft 365. Now, this is another license-free suite that we have, and you've heard of Active Backup. For business, that's going to be your backing up of endpoints, physical and virtual. This is going to be for Microsoft 365, and then there is another application for Google Workspace. This is a continuous backup. So anytime a new email pops in, anytime there's a new Teams chat, anytime there's new information, it is continuously backed up. So you just need to make sure that the hardware that you chose scales to the amount of change data and data growth that you're going to experience. Centralized management. So again, it makes it really easy to not only manage and make sure that your backups are happening, but also to recover from anything that may happen if you need to grab those backups. And like Keith mentioned at the beginning, it's another one of those license-free applications built into the hardware natively. To give you an idea of what some of our customers have said, Corn is an organization that because of their ability to start dropping those subscriptions for those former employees and former students, they were able to save about $60,000 in subscription costs on an annual basis, which I can pretty much guarantee you, I don't know the exact unit that was placed here, but I can guarantee you the cost of the solution did not go over the amount of money they're saving on a yearly basis. So, in the recovery options, you obviously need to have simple recovery so you can easily navigate a timeline in our portal for recovery, find the exact email, the exact version that you need to find, and you can restore it in place, or you can export it wherever you need it. And you can even offer anyone in your organization the ability for self-service. So if you trust your users, you can allow them. And I don't know if you want to do this. If they accidentally deleted an email, then I don't know if you should give them access to your recovery portal. But the feature is there, especially for those IT admins and IT teams that are like, I don't have time to deal with an email deletion. You can do this yourself. So it's nice to have that capability if you do have that trust in your users. That's all I had for you guys. I thank you so much. I'm sorry I jumped to this thank you slide in the middle. That's a new hotkey that I don't know why it exists, but yeah. Are there any questions for me?
I have a couple, but I'll let the group, if anybody has any questions. Going? Hearing nothing. All right. Well, I think that, I mean, maybe it's more of a conversation point than a question, but I have a couple customers who are doing this, and one of the things are using this exact solution. And one of the things that they really like about it, and they questioned at first, was the ability to do mailbox level restores.
Yeah.
And that's an important thing. They kind of thought that that wouldn't be the case, but they can do it down to the individual mailbox and the individual files within the mailbox, so it's completely recoverable.
Yeah, and the nice thing too about the recovery is that it utilizes our universal search. So if you deleted an email by accident and also forgot what that email was named or who it was to, but you know that it was about penguins, then you can just search penguins in the universal search, and it'll pull up, it'll read through all the emails and stuff. So it's not just the search is not just going to be for title, it's going to include all the content that's in those emails as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, and the one of the customers specifically that I'm thinking about, they not only use this as a way to back up their Microsoft 365 data, but they're actually replicating it. And we didn't talk about it today, but part of the ability within Synology is the native replication. So,
Yeah,
they have
yeah,
two units of sufficient size that are diverse geographically, and they're
yeah.
using one to do the Microsoft 365 backup, and then they're replicating it offsite to a backup machine, and then they have some kind of an archival strategy around that too.
Yeah,
So
and that's something that I didn't go into because if we want to start, power lunch is great. If we did like a power day,
yeah,
then I might be able to cover
yeah,
everything. But
exactly.
yeah, after that local backup is, that's not where you should stop at all. That's just kind of the point of today to show that they put that solution. But afterwards, you definitely want to be replicating that data offsite, because now you have the risk of, okay, all my data is in one place physically. What happens if I spill a coffee on this, or
And
the
yeah,
building catches on fire?
with that particular customer, I think if we were to ask them to drop trowel, we would see a Synology logo tattooed on their posterior areas, because they not only have it for that, but they're using it for the video capabilities. They have 30 cameras, I think, on it. And yeah, and then they actually have an air gapped backup solution too. So they've done a lot with it. They've
Yeah,
leveraged it in great ways. So there's some cool stuff. And I think, and we're kind of getting close on time. Piper,
yeah,
are we doing a drawing today? Okay, so before we do that though, I think one of the things for those people who are in the Minnesota, Minneapolis space, every once in a while you're in town, right? I mean, if we were
yeah.
to, if people were wanting to get more information, or if you're an enterprise customer who maybe has some questions on bigger stuff, is that something that we can facilitate a meeting with you if they wanted to ask you more detailed questions?
Yeah, absolutely. I always want to see Keith when I come there anyway, because he always shows me some really cool restaurant or gives me something really cool to do while I'm there.
We
So
have
you
to do ice fishing yet. We still need to get you out on a frozen lake.
hey, that
We
when I
maybe
was
maybe
there,
wait
the
for that.
yeah, we'll wait till this winter. I experienced my first -18 temperature earlier this year, and I was like, okay, okay, that's it. That this is fun. You guys are built differently out there.
Yeah, that's right. So
But yeah, that's definitely something. Anytime I'm out in town, I'm gonna let Keith know. So if you have anybody that may want to meet while I'm in those during those days, we'll facilitate that and get that done.
yep, it's nice for those. So anyway, I just
Yeah.
wanted to get that out there as an option if people wanted to meet. We can do this. We can set up some kind of a video conference and we can do that. But like I said, if you're around in Minnesota, Eric avails himself to us to have conversations. So
Yeah.
very good. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll go. Piper, do you want to do the wheel of death and fun and enjoyment? I mean, just fun and enjoyment.
Fun
Happy
and
thoughts.
adventure. Happy
What are we
Amazon
going for today?
$10 Amazon gift card. You could really
Nice,
start stacking these up if you continue to attend.
nice.
Oh yeah,
Raj will
restaurants.
be disappointed because we've
Oh,
been feeding him for the
Okay.
last few months. So
I'm gonna give that another spin because
yep,
it did
give her a
not.
spin.
yeah. Joshua isn't allowed to win.
Yeah,
I know. Joshua's one of us.
I would appreciate if someone new would win, just so people doesn't think that it's rigged. But
It's Raj
look
all the time,
at
right?
that. We do have a new winner.
awesome,
Winner, winner, chicken dinner.
Congrats, Brian.
You
awesome.
can go and get yourself a set of carabiners from Amazon. You always got to have carabiners.
Oh yeah.
You can never have enough.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
you gotta have them to hold on to the other ones too. So
that's
I
right.
mean,
You got to be prepared, man. You never know when you're in IT if you're going to be in a survival situation and need to rappel down a cabinet or something.
yeah, I mean that
Or
is a very
if you're in a
common
tornado, you got
emergency.
to stick yourself to a rack or something just to not get blown away. So
Oh
anyway,
yeah, yeah. Oh, that's what IT admins do, right? If they go down with their
yeah,
racks,
yeah.
you know.
If there's a tornado, you are expected to chain yourself to the rack and shield it with your body so no debris hits it.
Oh man, I can't. What does that service cost?
Right there. Yeah, it's time and a half. No.
Oh, okay, all right.
It's a different level of break fix. Anyway, no, always good to see you and get a presentation from you, Eric. Do a great job, and we'll explore some more in the future. But this is a good one for us. And like I said, I think
Absolutely.
uh, yeah, a service or a capability that not a lot of people know exists out there within the product, and it's native. It's right
Yeah.
there in it, and I can attest to it. I use it myself. So very good. Thank you,
Yeah.
and really appreciate it. And like I said, if
Hey,
anybody wants to get some time, just let us know.
absolutely. I appreciate the time, and I can't wait to do the next one.
All right. Thanks, guys. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.